I'm driving along to go to a friend's house. And as I was driving, somebody called me. And I realized this is really just where everyone is at. This is what everyone is dealing with right now. And because it's coming through, I'm just going to record it and I'll see if I post it. We'll see what happens with this video. But ultimately, here's the deal. We have gotten to a place where we are completely externalized. And this is really the progression, I believe, of Source. Source is trying desperately to wrap up and understand all aspects and fragments before that final test, before that final transition. The final transition being from this current density into the next, or this current evolution of itself, right? It's able to now collectively hold a higher vibration of light, making it more dense, right? Or less dense, excuse me. So that's what it's doing, rising through the densities, releasing aspects that hold or block the higher vibrational resonance of the creation. So as it's resolving this, as the resonance is transitioning into its next phase, just as if you were to do a dissertation, because this is a completion of one aspect of your education as Source. So it's like Source now has to get its PhD in this reality, this third density or third density. So it's like Source is saying, okay, this is it, guys. We really got to know our shit before we get out of here. And anything that doesn't work, anything that is completely resistant to this release is going to struggle, is going to drop away. And there are going to be a lot of people, perspectives, viewpoints of Source, right? Because that's what we are. We're little pinpoints of perspective as Source is learning itself, are going to be released and brought back into the whole. That's going to look like death, destruction in anybody's mind who is resistant to the evolution. Now, a lot of people are coming up and saying, I just don't want to be here anymore. I'm all done. And they are. So we need to release them from feeling guilty about wanting to be done. It's our fear that causes us to block the belief that it's one's right to decide when they will manifest or not. So if somebody wants to commit suicide, I'm not telling them, I would never tell somebody to actually commit suicide. That is, I believe, the last resort. However, it's just as arrogant for me to tell them not to commit suicide as it is for me to tell them to suffer and to continue to force their way through this system that does not work for them, so that I don't have to grieve the loss or anybody else have to grieve the loss of them. Once you actually are connecting beyond this reality, death changes. It no longer holds the same value. I used to fear dying all the time. I had horrible anxiety about it. As a child, I had dreams of burning alive, watching the flesh burn off of my bones. I had dreams of dying in car accidents. I almost died in car accidents. I've rolled my car 5 times when I was a teenager. I almost fell off of a cliff and was yanked back by an angel. I know. I have had more close calls than is my fair share. I'm definitely a cat in that respect. I think I'm like on 8 or something. So these things, these brushes with death filled me with anxiety as a young adult. Most of mine were in my young years. My brushes with death were all like pre-20s. So it made me feel vulnerable and scared. And so my 20s and early 30s, I was convinced I'd be dead by 32. I just had it in my head. I didn't realize I was connecting to another life where, yeah, I died at 32. I didn't understand that because time doesn't exist, because time is purely the way we experience in a linear fashion this creation, so that we can organize it and comprehend the nature of creation in this type of brain, right? That's what time is. So everything is happening at once. So yes, I am dying at 32 in one expression. I'm also being born in another expression. I'm also dying in another expression at 52. I also am preaching and teaching in another expression. I also am angelic in another expression. I am all of these things. And as you connect more and more and more to who you are, by going inside, by looking inside for the answers, not by going outside, because that's what Source is all done doing, right? That's the wrap up. We're good on that. We get it. We get what externalization looks like. So understanding that all of these things are happening at once, and seeing all these different parts of yourself, and watching yourself die over and over and over, and be born over and over, and others be dying and being born, it loses its meaning. It loses the fear of the meaning. All anxiety about death is gone for me now. Like, it's completely gone. When people die that I know, I don't actually feel sorrow for them at all. I feel joy for them, honestly. I feel the sorrow of the people around me, the sorrow and longing and loss that they are experiencing. And that's where I focus my support when I'm supporting families in grief. But I personally don't grieve. When my grandmother died of cancer, it was a horrible death. And I remember I felt kind of a numbness, as you do when you go through that process. And then I was with her at the hospital for about a month, in and out. I can't remember exactly how long now. It was so long ago, and I'm really bad at time. I think actually she was in the hospital for 2 or 3 weeks and then went home for almost a month. Anyway, I was in the hospital with her, and I had to go home to her house to get something. And I was in her bedroom, and it still smelled like her, but the hospital room didn't smell like her, and she didn't smell like her, but her bedroom smelled like her. And I remember I just got up on her bed, and I just cried and cried. And it was like releasing that grief, that loss. I knew the grandmother that I had had in my physical world was gone. And this is before I was really doing energy work or understanding as well as I do now. I knew I was losing her in the physical expression. And that is a loss. Physical expression is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I grieved there, my loss, my aspect. And then from that point forward, I really was able to feel and go through what it was that everybody else was. So I could support my mother with the loss of her mother. I could support my cousins and my family as best I could. So the reason I'm bringing all of this up, and the reason I'm talking about all of these issues, is because we're going to be facing a lot of death. We're going to be watching a lot of people die. What we must understand is that people are dying because Source is done with that perspective. By trying to cling to it, we're trying to cling to the old reality. We're like telling Source to stop learning. We're saying to Source, you can't move forward because we like living way too much. Remember, everything is already happening at once. So, we are all living. We're eternally, infinitely living. So when something happens to you, and it hurts your feelings, it makes you feel lost or confused, it makes you feel disconnected, it makes you feel checked out. When you experience these things like mass deaths, all of this is the resolution, the deconstruction of the old system. And I know that's going to sound cold and callous to some people, but our resistance to the deconstruction, whether it be on the personal level, on the I level, I am deconstructing my beliefs around loss, around grief, around life, around being of value, around not being of value. I am releasing these broken belief systems. Or if it's on the bigger scale, the larger scale, I am releasing this piece, this population that is representing a system of beliefs that simply isn't working and isn't applicable in our new expression. Some of us are here to hold the old. Some of us are here to hold the new. And some of us are here to transition between the two. So figure out what it is that you're doing. Are you a holder or are you a mover? And just do it. Let go of the fear that you are going to die, that somebody else is dying. Everyone is serving the creation right now. We are all on active duty. Okay, that's all. Remember, staying centered in yourself, staying grounded into this reality, this creation that you are currently expressing in, is how you walk your path. That's it. It doesn't matter what happens in other lifetimes. We got to let it go. Other pieces of us are dealing with that. Our higher soul is taking care of that. Come back to self, come back to present, come back to this moment, then attune to optimum vibration. If you can do that every time you feel fear, every time you feel grief, every time you feel loss, every time you feel pain, if you can come back to this moment, this center, this reality, this grounding, my optimum expression, that's how we progress. All right, seek your joy.